Hi, I'm Reverend Bill Foster, founder and executive director of Habitat for Missions. Before we get started here today, I need to explain something. Normally, HFM spends up to $1,000 to have an end-of-year video produced to review our ministry. This year, with all that's been going on with COVID-19, I made an executive decision that we would just go cheap and nasty. And so, this is not going to have any whiz-bang graphics. There's not going to be any editing. It's just going to be me sharing what's been going on this last year. And I hope you understand that we're trying to be good stewards with the funds that are donated to us. And so this is going to be it. All right, well, why don't we get started? A few years ago, I heard a story about a Roman galley ship. Now, for those of you that saw Ben-Hur, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's one of these craft that are propelled by a group of slaves rowing madly in the bow of the boat. At any rate, the story goes that the man in charge of the slaves made an announcement one day. He said, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the captain has decided we're taking tomorrow off. And of course, the galley all cheered and roared with glee. But then he went on to say, I got some bad news. The captain has decided to spend his day off water skiing. Listen, as I look back at this year, I gotta say it's been a good news, bad news story. The bad news is COVID-19. As almost everybody in the world is aware, it has really messed things about. The good news is that God is still in charge and He is still at work. We know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purposes. He's been working. Bad news? Well, yeah, we got some bad news. The pandemic shut down our promotional travels. Normally, our Director of Operations, Wayne Richards, and myself travel extensively to church conferences and camps promoting the ministry of HFM. This last summer, everything was shut down. Let me just give you an example. In 2019, my wife reported to me that I spent 3 nights home during the months of June and July 2019. This last summer, I had a total of 3 nights away. Now, that's good news for me, not having to work quite so hard, but bad news for us trying to spread the word and line things up for future projects for HFM. But in spite of that, the good news is that despite the travel, we've formed partnerships with 3 groups to do future projects and have 2 more organizations that are presently investigating the option once the pandemic passes. So it's not all bad news by any means. Now, COVID-19 did trigger some government mandated shutdowns of building sites, which caused significant delays in our completion dates. Volunteers withdrew their services. This resulted in further delays and cost overruns as we had to pay professional tradesmen to do the work that would normally be handled by volunteers. These delays meant that potentially, because a project wouldn't be done and sold, potentially that meant that we wouldn't have the money to pay back the investors who provided the interest-free loans to buy the house in the first place and pay for its development. I mean, it was a mess. Talk about pressure, dear Lord. Well, the good news in that situation is that God is Jehovah Jireh. He's my provider. Scripture says that He sees and He responds accordingly. He sees our needs and He provides, just like He did with Abraham. Many of our investors agreed to extend their loans and generously gave us time to complete properties, development, and to get them sold. New investors stood up and provided additional money, which avoided what could have been a real crisis for us, a cash flow crisis. We are so grateful to God for His provision. Well, one last bit of bad news from 2020. 4 properties that should have been completed in the spring were never put on the market until the autumn. We missed out on the ideal time to sell a property. The good news, though, We were able to complete 4 projects with a market value of $1.2 million. That's what happened this year. Despite a softer season for selling, 2 of these properties have already sold, one in October and then one just a couple of days ago in November. That particular project is probably one of my favorite of all time. The home is located in West Olive, Michigan, just outside of Holland, Michigan. The closing won't take place until December 23rd, so we don't have an exact figure on what the profit margin's likely to be, but it'll be around $35,000. That money has been earmarked to go to a ministry in India, the Little Lighthouse School for Girls, which provides a place where these gals can be kept separate, can be kept safe from abuse and poverty and the risk of human trafficking. That's good news. But the good news is even better. There is a donor that has agreed to match whatever funds we produce out of this house, dollar for dollar, which means if in fact we do clear $35,000 as we anticipate, then $70,000 will be infused into that ministry, allowing the school to double the number of girls that they have under their care from, I believe it's 35 up to 70. All of this has been made possible because of the faithful support of people like you. Despite a slowdown in the economy and temporary setbacks in the stock market, people have continued to give. I'm afraid, I gotta admit it, I've been shocked, please, but really surprised by the fact that giving over the last 8 to 10 months has mirrored what has happened in the past. And if in fact, end of year giving is similar to what we received in 2019, HFM will end this year financially in the black and able to continue its ministry going forward. Thank you. Thankfully, thank you for your faithfulness and your generosity. Well, time to probably wrap this thing up. So on behalf of Wayne Richards, our Director of Operations, Gary and Kathy Crendel, our CFOs, certainly all of the HFM board members, we wish to thank you and say Merry Christmas. And may you experience a truly blessed, God-blessed New Year.